Good evening, everyone. Will Dupree here in the KXAN live studio. We're kicking things off today as we're tracking results for some primary runoffs and a special election here in Travis County. Joining me and all of you at home right now are a team of experts here. We're going to throw things over now to Josh Hinkle. He's the host of State of Texas, our politics program. Josh, you're at home. We're trying to keep this all social distance as possible.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for having us. Will, I appreciate it. We're going to be with you all night, and right now we have the real experts with us. We have Wes Rappaport, who's our State Bureau reporter, and John Engel, who is our politics reporter. I want to start with Wes because he's been following probably the most hotly debated race that we've seen this election season so far here in Texas, U.S. Senate. Of course, we are talking about the Democratic race, the runoff that they're hoping to unseat incumbent Republican John Cornyn. You have MJ Hagar and Royce West. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with this race, we want to catch you up a little bit. Wes, tell us about these candidates and kind of what led them to this point.
Yeah, so MJ Hagar, the Air Force veteran, was shot down in combat overseas, has a Purple Heart for her service, lost a bid for Congress in the last election cycle, hoping to come back strong from the Round Rock area and essentially running as the anti-establishment, as it were. You know, somebody who is relatively new to the political game. You know, has not held elected office, and you know, is hoping that will play in her favor going against John Cornyn, who has been office for quite some time. Now, switching over to Royce West, somebody who has been a state senator since 1993, has a very storied career, as I'm sure he would tell you. Somebody who has been a champion for education. That's a record that he's touted. Has served, of course, in the legislature for the better part of 30 years here. And so he's got that legislative experience that he is hoping will carry him over that threshold to challenge John Cornyn in November. So two candidates that have a lot of similarities, Josh, in the way that they have approached this campaign. You know, they really have not spent too much time addressing each other, really both targeting Cornyn, really seeing eye to eye on many of the issues. And so we've been looking for some of the ways that they have focused a little bit differently. And it seems to be that Royce West is really challenging his record, really touting his record. MJ Hagar really sharing that veteran experience and hoping that will carry her forward.
You know, the polls just closed at 7. Of course, if you were still in line after 7, you could cast your vote still, but we're still getting a lot of these voting numbers in. But, you know, as of just recently, we have a whole team of experts working on the election tonight. So we're getting these results fed to us as we're delivering them to you. I understand that Hagar just took a small lead. There's more than a 500,000 votes that have been cast in this race alone. She's ahead by 181 votes right now, according to the people that are keeping up with votes in our newsroom. What do you think about that small lead at this point, Wes?
Well, I think that what you'll see is this race stay fairly tight until we get some of those larger counties in. You know, Royce West, a staple in the Dallas area, and so likely as the Dallas area votes come in, that's when you'll see him surge a little bit. MJ Hagar has really tried to hone in on the Central Texas voters, and so I would imagine that you would see somewhat of a surge when some of those Central Texas votes come in. So certainly we'll be watching that, but I think that it will stay fairly close throughout the evening until we as we get the early voting numbers out of the way, as we start to tabulate some of those absentee ballots, those mail-in ballots, and then of course the election day results here today. I think that's when we'll get a much clearer picture later on into the evening.
I mean, let's talk about the turnout a little bit. We were previously chatting before we went live about how much more interest there seems to be from Texans in this runoff election compared to something similar back in 2016. Triple the amount of people have turned out. And I think you're really seeing that in a race like this. Right now, Hager and West are neck and neck. The latest results show 50% for one of them, 50% for the other one.
Yeah, the election results in terms of the early voting, which is of course that 2-week period prior to election day, results from this early voting period, Josh, have tripled the results that we saw in 2016. In 2016, the percentage of early voters to registered voters was about 2%. This year, about 6%. So certainly seeing more of an interest in the political process. And I think that comes from some of the challenges that folks are facing right now. Of course, we're in the middle of a pandemic. You know, people's health risks are on the line here. We've had a lot of conversations about education and the challenges that come with that. You know, we've seen the economy in the unstable situation that it is in right now. And so I think people are using their vote to show their persuasion on those issues. So I think that it'll be really interesting to see where those votes end up landing. But certainly the simple fact of everything that's going on right now, definitely from what we've seen, has a role in all of this.
And the mail-in ballot has been such a big controversial topic this election season specifically, because so many people were talking about mail-in ballots because of the coronavirus. And there was so many fights, political fights about whether mail-in ballots should even be allowed, who should be able to do the mail-in ballot. And we heard from our Travis County clerk today that as of 4:30, Travis County had more than 32,000 requests for mail-in ballots, and her office had received roughly 21,000 of those ballots already. So that's a lot of people that are saying, I want to vote by mail, and then actually doing that and sending it back. She also told our investigator, Jody Barr, that typically 80% of mail-in ballots requested get sent back in by voters. So as of 4:30, that percentage was close to 66%. That's a lot, and that was, about 2.5 hours before the polls closed. And the rules with mail-in ballots is that you still have until tomorrow at 5 o'clock to get those in. So we're still going to be counting votes for quite a while. And depending on, how these people actually cast their vote, we could be looking at some numbers that could change maybe significantly overnight.
Yeah, we will be watching, of course, very closely how these numbers change overnight, because as we wait for some of those mail-in ballots to come in, as we have further discussions even about the lawsuits that are being filed. We found out today, this afternoon, the Texas Civil Rights Project is suing the state of Texas over folks who contracted COVID-19 after the deadline to request a mail-in ballot. So there were already lawsuits going on right now against the state about people who contracted the virus before the deadline for those mail-in ballots. But now folks who contracted the virus, say a couple of days ago, now have concerns about going to vote. There is now a lawsuit underway that's just filed this evening. So this is certainly far from over, and I think that we will be a lot closer in watching some of these different kinds of ballots, non-traditional as opposed to just walking in and casting your ballot in person. I think those other ways to cast your ballot will certainly be on the forefront of the discussion tonight and moving forward.
And it seemed like most people were following those social distancing and masking rules while they were at the polls today. We had crews that were kind of monitoring that throughout the Central Texas area and didn't really report any problems. It seemed like it was pretty smooth. The lines were getting through pretty fast. And I know you've got to go pretty soon because you're actually going to interview Royce West, correct?
Yeah, we are watching, of course, the virtual watch parties for the Royce West and the MJ Hager campaigns. Have a conversation with Mr. West coming up here in a few minutes.
Great. Wes, thanks for being with us. We really appreciate it. I want to turn it over to John Engel now, because there's another big one that people have been watching, U.S. House District 10. That's the Democratic race that is between Mike Siegel and Pritesh Gandhi. Talk to us about those candidates and who they are and kind of what's at stake for them today.
Yeah, so in order to talk about this campaign and this election, you got to go back to 2018. So Mike Siegel was the Democratic nominee in the Texas 10th Congressional District back in 2018. He lost to Michael McCall, but only by 4.5 points. So what Mike Siegel did undoubtedly was prove that district is not completely out of reach for Democrats. 4.5 points is still a wide margin, but one that's not unattainable. That's about 13,000 votes, I believe, is what it came down to. And so this is a district that stretches from North Austin to Northwest Houston and has a lot in between. So it's a very interesting race to watch, especially when you look at these two candidates. Mike Siegel is a civil rights attorney. He is a member of the much more progressive wing of the Democratic Party, supports the Green New Deal, supports Medicare for all. He's endorsed by Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, endorsed by a lot of unions, very pro-worker. He gets a lot of that support. He had that in 2018, did a great job of building that infrastructure and carrying that into this election cycle. Now, he was outraised by Dr. Pritesh Gandhi, who is a practicing physician in a nonprofit clinic in East Austin. He has been on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic and raised a ton of money. He is on CNN or MSNBC, what seems like every other night. I think his campaign the other night told me that they had made a dozen cable news hits in the last several weeks. That's saying something about his position as a physician and the value there during this pandemic. What we're seeing in the results early on are very interesting too. It looks like Mike Siegel has a bit of a narrow lead in these early reporting over Dr. Pritesh Gandhi. Gandhi occupies more of that moderate position. A Joe Biden-like candidate is how I've described him in the past. He believes in Medicare for all who want it. He wants universal health care coverage just like Mike Siegel, but he doesn't think that only a government-powered healthcare system, that's not necessarily the only answer. So they split on some issues like that, but are not really so dissimilar. That's what's so interesting in these primary races, and what Wes was also talking about with the Texas Senate race. You've got pretty like-minded people who diverge on a couple of issues, but it'll be interesting to see if Mike Siegel's momentum carries him from 2018 through this 2020 election as well.
Yeah, and like you said, he's slightly ahead right now. Will, can you walk us through those results? I know you have some of the results there in front of us.
Yeah, right now viewers are looking at the results from the U.S. House District 10 race, which John was just detailing for us. At the moment, it shows a slight lead, as John just said too, for Mike Siegel. Right now, the vote is about 53%. That's about 3,700 votes. And Pritesh Gandhi has about 47%. That's about 3,300 votes. Again, this is just about 20% of the vote being counted at this point. To highlight where the U.S. Senate race, the Democratic runoff there stands, it is very close. So at the moment, the percentages are 50-50. MJ Hagar has a slight lead. It's very, very slight, as you said a minute ago, Josh. But we also have some new results coming in from the Travis County District Attorney Democratic runoff. And if you want to take a look at right here, there is a huge lead for Jose Garza at the moment, 68% of the vote at this very moment. Margaret Moore at 32%. So that's one other race, Josh, that we are keeping a very close watch on tonight.
Yeah, and that's one that I really want to talk to our investigator, Avery Travis, who's been covering this. You can probably see her over John's shoulder right there. She's working
Say hi,
away. Avery. We'll get to you after we're done with John, because I know John has to go shortly because he is going to be on KXAN on TV shortly. But John, one race in Travis County that we have to talk about before you go is one that you've been covering in recent days. It is actually not for this runoff election. It's for the special election that's happening right now. State Senate District 14. That is Kirk Watson, former Austin mayor, longtime state senator. He retired, and so now you have two people that are, well, you have more than two people, but the two that were the front runners are Sarah Eckhart and Eddie Rodriguez. Eddie Rodriguez, of course, is a state representative, and Sarah Eckhart was most recently our county judge. So talk to me about that race. There's been a big kind of a development that has made some headlines in the last day because of a story you were reporting on.
Yeah, well, let's start with that story then. What we were reporting with obviously your help, Josh, was an interesting one about the dead suspect loophole, which KXAN has been investigating for years now, which essentially says that if a suspect dies in police custody, law enforcement and government have broad authority to withhold what information gets out to the public because that person didn't go through the court system. Now, there have been efforts to fix that loophole. Most recently in 2019, a bill came up, House Bill 147, went before a committee, and one county in Texas registered in opposition to that bill. One county, and it was Travis County. It's unclear why Travis County registered in opposition to that bill. It's unclear who flagged that bill to be opposed on behalf of the county. But those were questions we put in front of Sarah Eckhart, the former Travis County judge, because she was leading the Travis County Commissioner's Court at the time. That bill was supported by her now opponent in the Senate district race, Eddie Rodriguez, when he was in the state house. And so there are unanswered questions on that front, and a storyline that came out on the election day eve. So likely not to have a huge impact on this cycle, but still one we're going to be asking questions about long after this election. What you have here are 6 candidates all vying to replace Kirk Watson, who was in the Senate for about 13 years, I believe, Josh, and took a job as a dean at the University of Houston. This is an unexpired term, so they're running to fill the rest of his term. Eddie Rodriguez and Sarah Eckhart are the 2 biggest names on that list. You do have a former Austin City Council member in Don Zimmerman who is running as well, but Eckhart and Rodriguez are both on those platforms of experience and leadership. They both say that is their strength, albeit that Rodriguez's leadership experience came at the legislative level, and Sarah Eckhart's came as the chief executive of the county, so to speak. So it'll be interesting to see whose leadership resonated most with voters. That's a race I wouldn't want to be in charge of calling until it's completely done, because I think it could be very close. Both candidates raised a lot of money, and it did start to get chippy there at the end a little bit, but Sarah Eckhart and Eddie Rodriguez, definitely the biggest names on that list, Josh.
Now, with the dead suspect loophole, I don't want to go too far into the weeds, but it's been really important because of everything that's been happening in the nation right now. There is a political climate, a willingness for police reform from so many people, and that bill really, strikes to the heart of the transparency that police are expected to give the public now when we're talking about things like body camera and dash camera, the evidence that will show any possible brutality that's coming from police agencies. And I think that that's something that lawmakers are really going to have to focus on in the upcoming legislative session, which doesn't start until January. And, I think it's going to be probably one of the big focuses for this session.
I think you're right. And when we talk about the timeliness of the things going on in this country, across the world, and here in Central Texas, that hearing that we were talking about where Travis County registered in opposition to that bill to fill the loophole was 1 month before Javier Ambler died in the custody of Williamson County deputies in North Austin. 1 month. And the dead suspect loophole was used by the Williamson County Sheriff's Office to limit what information was released to the media and to the public about Javier Ambler's death. So these things, none of it operates in a vacuum, obviously, but knowing that it all coincided with this major case for Central Texas, Javier Ambler, we didn't know much of anything about his death until 15 months after that happened. This is a bill that would remove the government as the gatekeeper of public records when a suspect dies in custody of police. It did not make it to the governor's desk. There are efforts to renew that push in the next legislative session, but Travis County told us, and a Travis County attorney said they would seek the Attorney General's opinion on whether it had to release several communications that were had by government, either staff or elected officials in Travis County about this bill. They're trying to withhold that from getting out to the media. We want to know who flagged that bill on behalf of Travis County, who said we are going to make a statement by registering in opposition to filling this loophole. We don't know that, and it could be a while, Josh, before we do.
Yeah, and about 10 minutes ago, Eckhart was ahead, and she was at about 51%, and Rodriguez was at about 34%. But then you also have someone that is scoring double digits right now, as Don Zimmerman, former city councilman and a Republican. And this has been traditionally a Democratic district. It's not just Travis County. It stretches over into Bastrop County and east of Austin. So, there are people beyond the, the liberal parts of Travis County that really are paying attention to this race as well.
Well, and remember this, Josh, all of these other races are runoffs. You're going to get the candidate that emerges from this primary. The special election is not a runoff. If no single candidate gets more than 50% of the vote total here, we will go to a runoff at a later date that is yet to be determined if it's needed. So if Sarah Eckhart or Eddie Rodriguez or whoever else, Don Zimmerman, are not able to get to that 51% threshold, then this race goes to a runoff of its own. That's an additional layer and storyline that we're watching with this one. Like you said, it appears that Sarah Eckhart is at that threshold right now, but we still have a lot to learn. Polls just closed an hour ago, so we're getting information as we speak, and it's changing constantly. I would be surprised if that gap between Sarah Eckhart and Eddie Rodriguez stays that large when this is all said and done. I think it really will be narrow. I would expect it to be a narrow finish between those two.
John, before we let you go, you're kind of new to Texas. So what do you think about the first really major election cycle that's been happening as a political reporter at KXAN?
It's hot. I know that has nothing to do
the
with
weather.
Election. It's hot, man. It's hot. It's so hot. It's interesting, it is an energized electorate. I will say that, especially during a primary process that in some states can become a little sleepy when candidates, like-minded candidates are fighting it out within their own party. But you have not seen that here, especially on the Democratic primary runoff side. You are seeing a push to a more progressive platform, battling with more moderate candidates who are in that mold of a Joe Biden or the appeal across the aisle. There are people who are looking for real radical change right now, and maybe radical is not even the right word, but real substantive change in how our system operates and how the system serves people. And to see that intersection in this election has been fascinating for me, and to see how competitive some of these primaries really are. It's great to watch as a lover of politics and just someone who enjoys this stuff. And I can't imagine being the candidates themselves going through this process. I think I've told every single person in these interviews that I would hate to be in their position in these next few hours, and I mean it. I can't imagine.
Yeah. Well, John, I know you got to get to KXAN.
It's hot,
TV
Josh.
side of it.
It's so hot. That's my only take on Texas. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We'll catch up with you a little bit later. We can talk about some more results, Will, while we wait on our next guest. But I did also just see that Margaret Moore, speaking of Avery being behind John Engel in the office there, because she's following the Travis County District Attorney race. It looks like Margaret Moore, our current DA, has conceded the race. The statement coming from her office says, after receiving initial election results from early voting, Margaret Moore released the following statement. I want to thank the voters of Travis County for giving me the opportunity to serve our community over the last 3 years. The district attorney's office has made significant improvements to ensure police officers are being held accountable, to prioritize the prosecution of sexual assault cases, and establish new diversion programs for first-time offenders. I'm very proud of the progress we have made thus far. Congratulations to my opponent for his victory tonight. I wish him well, in the future. And she's talking about Jose Garza, of course, who we spoke with I guess it was last week, right? We had both of them on KXAN Live to talk about this. Right now, though, we'll come back and talk about the DA a little bit more with Avery, but I just wanted to get that out there for our viewers. But you can probably see popping up on your screen right now is a man named Professor Eric McDaniel from the University of Texas. Professor, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for bringing me on.
Well, we really wanted to talk to you because of your specific background and expertise in politics. Let's kind of start with just an introduction. Tell us what you study, what you teach, and why that's important right now.
So the way I try to describe our work is there are certain things you're never supposed to talk about in a polite company, and that's race, religion, and politics. And my work follows the intersection of all three.
Yeah.
So I focus primarily on religion and politics. Specifically, my early work focused on the role of the Black church and understanding African-American political activism. Currently, I'm working on projects related to religious nationalism and how that has shaped American political thought and behavior. My classes, I've taught the Introduction to American Government course, so I get to see really a good cross-section of the students coming through the University of Texas, with the hope being that I can communicate many of the things that we're talking about right now and the importance of these things to them. In addition to that, I've also taught courses on health policy, social welfare policy, and classes related to racial politics.
So many of the races we've been following this runoff season have really brought some of those issues into the forefront because there has been, let's start with, race and police injustice and police brutality. This is a political hot button that so many people are asking candidates about or want to know how their candidates would respond to these issues if they become, their elected leader.
This is a critical time, and I think one of the reasons why you're seeing so much turnout is frustration over the government response to the coronavirus, but also regarding the issues related to police brutality. And it's been something that's been simmering for a while, and it's going to kind of a call to action. And I think what's important, if we think about the civil rights movement and other movements such as this, is there's usually something kind of bubbling underneath where people feel like, well, what can we do? And usually there's a point where it's like, look, I don't know what we can do, but we have to do something now. And it's clear when you're seeing the protests that people believe that, no, something must be done. We can't sit here. We don't know exactly how to accomplish this, but something needs to be done. And I think this may show up in the polls as well.
And you talked about the coronavirus. I mean, it's also had an impact on the way we vote. And I think some people were surprised that the turnout was as large as it was so far. Any thoughts on that?
I think people they're frustrated. I think this has been going on for a very long period of time. If you look at some of the recent polls, what you've seen is where the majority of Texans thought that this was going pretty well in April. You're finding the majority now believe that it's not going well. And when things don't go well, people punish the incumbents. And I think what you have right now is a frustration over the incumbents and a belief that they are not doing what they're supposed to do. And this was probably getting people out to the polls more than they would because they realize something needs to be done. I'm hearing people that are just historically known for not being politically engaged who are looking at, one, the protest, but also the reaction to the coronavirus and saying, no, something needs to be done. And this is getting them to turn out when they normally would not.
Now, something about the time frame that's gone by since we had the primary election, now we're to the primary runoff. In that time, really, those two issues have exploded. The coronavirus here in Texas, at least, and then also, the demonstrations concerning race and police brutality around the nation. But do you expect that those two issues will be such an impact on an election as we move forward to the general in November?
It all depends on how things go in the state of Texas. I think I expect it to spike in the state soon, but if it takes a long time for it to spike, it's going to be in a lot of people's memory. I think if the spike had happened maybe in April, people will not be so upset with the incumbents now. But I do think that there is something that will sit on people's minds, because they will be upset about reopening the state, and in the midst of reopening the state, basically bringing the virus into the state. And so they're going to want to punish the incumbents for this. So I think people are going to want to remember this and want to punish the incumbents. But I think the number is larger now than maybe in November, when the peak of it may have been a couple months behind.
Does, the coronavirus and everything else that's going on with, like we talked about, race and police issues, will that impact the way that you're going to be teaching your students in the coming semester? Because, of course, I know that we're having to deal with things like, do we do virtual, do we do in person, that kind of thing. But beyond that, I mean, their topics have got to tweak a little bit, right?
Very much so. So we will be online. Luckily, I've already done some online teaching, so I'm prepared to do that. But I was telling somebody the other day in my politics of healthcare class, I'm going to have to just completely rewrite my lectures to talk about the government response to the coronavirus. And, it was talking about the changes with the ACA, but now with the coronavirus, it's kind of taken over our understanding of, the role of government and basically what actions the government should take in terms of preserving the health of its citizens.
And, we've been talking about a little bit how the coronavirus might, affect the vote. And I think that some people are now kind of considering legal action, depending on, if people were positive, at what point, that kind of thing. Was it a risk? Do you expect that more types of, courtroom battles might be brewing when it comes to coronavirus and the election coming up?
There may be. I mean, we've already seen the court battle over mail-in voting in the state of Texas. There have been affidavits given to individuals so they can report who they've been in contact with. Because one of the key things about the coronavirus is not just testing, but tracking. And if people aren't sharing that information, to what extent will law enforcement step in to try to force people to tell them because who you've been in contact with? I think that's going to be an interesting thing to see how people are going to react to this. And there may be some suits launched towards state and local government, even the federal government, regarding a failure to protect the citizens. So I do believe there will be significant legal action. You've seen legal action regarding opening up the state, but you're probably going to see some legal action regarding basically people seeking redress from the state because they believe they've been failed.
One of the things we were talking about earlier with our political reporter, John Engel, was kind of an expectation of what lawmakers are going to do, at least here in Texas, in the next legislative session, which starts in January. Clearly coronavirus will be probably a big talker during the session, but I imagine police reform will also probably get more attention than it's gotten in quite a long time.
Yes, it's going to receive quite a bit of attention. And one of the things we also have to be aware of is that in the midst of talking about coronavirus as well as police reform, there's going to be probably a significant budget shortfall. And that's probably going to take a lot of the attention. Given the legislature only meets for a set amount of time, once every 2 years, we should expect there to be several special sessions called to address these various issues that are coming about. So the coronavirus, so basically expanding public health efforts, police reform will be a second thing, but then also probably the budget. And the budget's probably going to be the first thing, the biggest thing to tackle, because the budget needs to be set in order to address these other two.
Well, Professor McDaniel, thank you so much for talking with us. We're going to be going all night, so we may come back to you. We'll have our people. All right. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And good luck with the semester coming up.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, Will, I think we have Avery Travis that is going to be able to talk to us about the district attorney's race, if I can.
Yeah, we just got some word that Margaret Moore, the incumbent district attorney, has conceded the race after her opponent, her challenger, Jose Garza, posted a large lead right out the gate. So I want to show you all some results really quickly as we pull up Avery Travis. She's following the district attorney race here in Travis County. Right here, look at the results, everybody. 68% of the vote is going to Jose Garza at this point. Granted, it's not many votes that have been counted at this point, but it's enough of a lead right there at the beginning that Margaret Moore has conceded the race. So I think that that's opportunity now for us to talk to Avery Travis, one of our reporters here at KXAN.
Hey, Avery, thanks for being with us. We saw you behind John Engel a little bit earlier. You there, Avery? Well, I guess maybe we're having a little bit of technical issues. This is a race that Avery's been following for quite a while, ever since she started here back in January. This was, Avery covers a lot of court-related issues, so maybe if we got her now. Avery, can you hear us? All right, well.
There was a note that it just popped up on the bottom of my screen saying she's having some audio issues, obviously, so we are working those out. We will have her back on and talking with us to share her expertise because, once again, as Josh and I both stated, she is following the Travis County District Attorney race here, and we want to show those results one more time, just so if you missed them. Jose Garza, the man who is challenging Margaret Moore in the Democratic primary, has jumped far ahead there in that early vote count. 68% of the vote going to Jose Garza, 32% to Margaret Moore. In addition, we have some other races. So Margaret Moore has conceded. We want to be able to pass that along and let everybody know that that is what has happened with that particular race. And we are also following other results coming in. So Josh, just a few moments ago, we got some updated numbers for Texas Senate District 14. This is the seat vacated by Senator Kirk Watson. And right here, you can see right here, 51% of the vote is going to Sarah Eckhart, 34% to Eddie Rodriguez, and 12% to Don Zimmerman, the Republican former Austin City Council member.
Yeah, so that's a smaller lead than she had, I guess about 30 minutes ago. So yeah, it's still too close to call in that one for sure. Will be an interesting one to see who's going to be replacing longtime incumbent Democratic senator who just retired, Kirk Watson, former Austin mayor. It looks like we also have updated numbers for the U.S. Senate race. Right now, MJ Hagar is at 51.6%, and Royce West is at 48.4%. So right now, Hagar is on top, possibly going to be able to pull that out so she can face John Cornyn in November. I guess we're back with Avery Travis again. Avery, you hear us now? Oh no, we can't hear you.
No, we can't hear you though. Yeah.
This is the beauty of a live production, people.
Let's see. Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Thank you.
All right, you guys. Sorry, I was on another Zoom. I was just on a watch party for Jose Garza, and I think somehow switching back and forth. Technology didn't like me hopping from one party to another. Sorry, guys.
No worries at all. We were just talking about the district attorney race and talking about, really maybe kind of what's going through the campaign office for Margaret Moore right now. We just had her and her opponent, Jose Garza, on KXAN Live last week, where we had an in-depth conversation with them about all of the issues that that office is facing right now. They had some criticism for each other, but also they had some similarities. And I think that people were very interested in this race, considering everything that's going on in our community right now.
Yeah, definitely. I talked to both of them today, and like you said, a lot of similarities in the way they approach the criminal justice system. Both of them really heavy hitters on criminal justice reform, just maybe a different approach to how they think about that reform. Obviously, we're going to hear from Jose Garza tonight, his big platform being ending the cash bail system as a whole. He says that system weighs far too heavily on people of color, and that we've really seen that come out, especially in calls from the community in the past 6 weeks. Margaret Moore definitely relies a lot on diversion programs, and she really had campaigned on a platform of lowering our jail population to an extent. A big sticking point from her, and we heard about that in that conversation with you, Josh, on KXAN Live just a week ago. A big sticking point for her, though, is public safety. Her main argument being a lot of the folks in the Travis County Jail are high-level offenders, and that was a sticking point she just was not willing to concede when it comes to cash bail, personal bonds, when it comes to lessening our county jail population. As we know, the conversation surrounding the cash bail system has been a nationwide one. We've heard it really been brought to the forefront by district attorneys from Philadelphia to California, and it really was a major player here in the conversation in Travis County.
What's next in this race? I mean, Margaret Moore will still be the district attorney for several months because we still have to get through the general election and everything. What's Jose Garza going to be focusing on at this point?
I asked him today, if he were to be elected in November, what's the first thing he'll do in office? And is he going to get started working on that now? The three main things he says he's already looking forward to doing are: one, ending that cash bail system; two, ending the prosecution of low-level drug crimes; and really, three, reconnecting with the sexual assault survivor community. That is something that was another sticking point for Margaret Moore. I know she did reference that in her statement that she released just a few minutes ago. I think that today, Mr. Garza told me that is what he's really going to be building off of and working towards in the next few months as we head into the November election, is his connections with the advocates in that community and survivors in that community. That is a community he really wants to bring more of a voice, in his opinion, to the table. And he says that that's kind of the first step ahead of November.
And for people that may not be familiar with this race, I mean, does he have a Republican opponent, or is this thing in the bag?
Here in Travis County, it does look favorable for him, but he will be facing off with Martin Harry. He's the Republican on the ballot. He's a local attorney. His platform really, in conversations with him, has been public safety. He has a lot of concerns about ending the cash bail system, one of Garza's obviously main platform points. We're going to be hearing from him more now that he knows who his opponent in November will be. So we'll definitely be getting some updates from him as we move forward towards that November election.
And when we were having the audio issues, we were kind of tap dancing. Just kidding. No, we were talking about how Margaret Moore was really one of the first people that you met as investigator coming to our station in January when you started, and meeting people that were on your crime and court beats and everything. So, I mean, she's really kind of one of the voices, that office at least, that you want to hear from. I think back then it was priest sex abuse that you were talking with her about. So, I mean, this office covers a wide range of things, from everything from the priest stuff to the way that the drugs are going to be prosecuted in our community, to what's happening in our jails. It's a big office.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the top felony prosecutor, but they really have a hand in so much of our criminal justice system. They're in constant communication with the county judges, the district judges here. They're in constant communication with the police department. It is such an important office. And, like you said, especially for us here at KXAN, we're covering so many different cases, really in the criminal justice system, heading into the criminal justice system, and it's really an important one for all of our viewers. It affects, how they live out their everyday lives and how they interact with that justice system. For Mr. Garza, his big point is reimagining that justice system as a whole. You'll hear him say that tonight and moving forward towards the November election, and I think a lot of the viewers resonated with that perspective of reimagining how we all interact with that system. Margaret Moore, though, just to point out, one of the very first people to start that reimagining, she's worked in the county attorney's office as an assistant district attorney, really one of the first people to help start diversion programs here in the county. So it has been an interesting race, hearing from someone who's been a part of that system for such a long time, and then someone who's really bringing quite a fresh take to it as well.
Avery, I know you have to get ready for the things you've got going on KXAN on air a little bit later. Thank you for being with us. We really appreciate it. And thanks for covering this, this race for us.
Thank you for your patience with the audio issues, you guys.
Well, Will, I want to go over to Jim Henson now. He is with the Texas Politics Project, and he is, there you go. Hey, Jim, how's it going?
Going well. How are you, Josh?
Doing well. Thank you for being with us and with our viewers tonight. You know, we've talked with you several times. It seems like you are one of our go-tos for the election, especially when it comes to the way the election results compared to the polling we were seeing. Any surprises tonight with what you're seeing come in so far?
Well, I mean, I think when you look at a race like a runoff election, there's not a lot of polling that's going to be relevant. The one race that we have seen some polling in is the Democratic runoff for the U.S. Senate seat. And that's looking, you know, fairly surprising compared at least to some of the polling we've seen. In the work that we've done, we've been reluctant to poll in that race because we didn't really know what the turnout was going to be like. And the polling we did show illustrated that a lot of Texans really had no idea who either of the candidates were, that is Royce West or MJ Hagar. The early polling that was out there showed that Hagar was ahead, often by double figures. And what we're seeing now is a neck and neck race. The last time I saw the numbers updated a few minutes ago, MJ Hagar was slightly ahead, but I think by, you know, not more than a point or so. And it just goes to show you that these elections are very unpredictable, particularly when you see polling that shows that, you know, between 40 and 50% of the people that you're polling don't have an opinion about the race. So you've got two levels of uncertainty. You don't know who's going to show up to vote. And of the people that you can get in touch with and even begin to screen, most don't have an opinion, and they're making up their mind at the last minute and for reasons that you're probably not very clear on.
Right. Yeah. Will, do you have that race that we could look at the results and kind of go over those with us?
We just got some updated numbers, Josh and James and Jim. So if you want to take a look really quickly, here we are right now. The vote stands at 52% for MJ Hagar. The vote count is about 341,037 votes. Royce West trails her just slightly at 48%. His vote count is about 318,457. So again, she has increased the lead slightly since we last spoke and got an update on the results, but it's still a very close race, guys.
Yeah, and it's something about this race too, Jim, is that they still have a long way to go until November. Whoever wins tonight is got an uphill battle because you have a senator who's been in office for quite a long time, John Cornyn, a Republican from Texas. So, you know, what's that going to be like for the rest of this electorate, especially considering all the crazy challenges that candidates are facing right now with the way they're having to campaign?
Well, you know, this is one of the more interesting races in the country, really, because on one hand, John Cornyn, a senior senator running for, I think, his fourth term, second in command, really, and in line to become majority leader were, you know, Mitch McConnell to retire or lose this election. And Mitch McConnell is in a tough race himself in his home state of Kentucky. And so, you know, on one hand, Democrats have any Democrat that's going to run, and certainly either one of these Democrats, for the reasons that we were just discussing, you know, have a big challenge. John Cornyn is going to be, as you say, well-funded. I mean, there's just going to be, you know, practically no limit to the amount of money that will flow in to defend John Cornyn, both from his fundraisers in the state, but from national organizations. You know, on the other hand, Cornyn has always been a very interesting Republican figure in the sense that, you know, his job approval numbers, as you and I have talked about on your show before, are always kind of give you the sense that Republicans are damning him with faint praise. You know, his numbers are, you know, his job approval numbers, they're not terrible, but they're typically among Republicans still even in the 60s or low 70s at best, which is well below the more popular Republicans at various times throughout Cornyn's service, whether it was Rick Perry, in the last decade or now, people like Greg Abbott or even Ted Cruz are more popular among the Republican base. And that's always made Cornyn seem somewhat vulnerable, even though he's managed to win these races. But I think no matter who comes out of this Democratic primary, Hagar or West, this is likely to be a tougher race than Cornyn has had than in the past because of the national environment and because Donald Trump is such a mobilizing force for Democrats. You know, as we're watching those primary numbers, Josh, I would add, as I look at these numbers, we still have at last report, at least the numbers I'm looking at, less than half of the votes in, less than half of the precincts in from Dallas County, where West is currently going to, you know, that's his home area. He's currently leading Hagar in that area by about 71-28. If he holds that margin and the proportions hold up, that's going to make up part of that gap. And it looks to me like Hagar and West are running very close. With last time I checked, West slightly ahead in Harris County. These are two big areas with large African-American voting populations. And race has become kind of an issue in this context because of you know, the shift in the public discussion of race in a way that I think folks had not anticipated, and that I think, you know, the Cornyn campaign is going to have to probably recalculate a little bit.
You know, your organization also looks beyond candidates, but also issues and topics that are mattering to voters right now. Clearly, the coronavirus is one of those topics that is sticking out for many people. Were you surprised at all by the turnout? Because it seemed rather large compared to 2016, considering people are dealing with so much right now.
Well, I mean, you know, you were talking to my colleague Eric about that a little while ago, and I think it's an interesting subject. And, you know, on one hand, you know, there's absolutely no doubt, you know, we've seen it in the numbers, and I think we'll see it. We get the final tallies later tonight. Much higher turnout than we've seen in this kind of election in the past. And I think it's a matter of the climate. You know, you and Professor McDaniel were talking about, you know, just this big cluster of issues that are out there that are so pressing. You know, obviously, as you mentioned, the pandemic, the economic fallout of the pandemic, which in Texas has been accentuated by the fall in the price of oil, and you know, this very sustained discussion of racial justice and the politics of race and policing. I think all of these, you know, we're at kind of a conjunction of very big issues that, you know, are certainly bigger than, you know, you and I have been talking about these things for several years now. We've not seen anything remotely like this in the time that we've been talking. And we really haven't seen anything remotely like this, the scale and the intensity of these issues, you know, since really the Republicans took over in the early part of the 2000s. And I think we're going to continue to see higher turnout. You know, I'm a little reluctant to say this turnout is so magnificent because it's going to still wind up being pretty low in absolute terms. It's high from a very low baseline. But I think what we can say about this is that it probably does foreshadow a really significant rise in turnout in the general election.
Yeah, what do you expect the campaign field is going to look like between now and November?
Well, I think we're going to see a lot of the kinds of adjustments that we've seen already. We're going to see a lot of money poured into digital, a lot of money poured into television, but I think in particular digital. And we're going to see campaigns have to innovate to some degree in the environment that we're in, because, you know, even should the recent peak, you know, which we're all hoping for, the recent peak in the pandemic in Texas begin to subside, there's not really any indication that we're not going to be playing whack-a-mole with the coronavirus for the next several months. And so I think that's going to really change the field. You know, in terms of the issues, you know, the issues we talked about are going to be there. But this is an issue. I think there's no way that this is an election that we have to say there's no way it's not going to be dominated by the presence of Donald Trump, and the way that, you know, Trump in large ways and small forces candidates to take positions relative to where he is, both on the issues and toward Trump himself.
You know, one of our producers brought up a good reminder to me just now in a message that there will likely be some close races that are not called tonight. That's because mail-in ballots can be received up to 5 o'clock tomorrow, Wednesday night. And
right.
in Travis County, there were more than 32,000 ballot by mail requests. So clearly this has been a controversial issue, it seems like, this election season. Do you expect we're going to see even more legal battles? I was talking with Professor McDaniel, you know, about that. What's your take on this ahead of November?
Well, I think in terms of vote by mail, I mean, I would say yes, I agree with Eric to the extent that certainly in this environment, the terrain of elections is going to get even more subject to legal fights back and forth than it usually is. And it usually is. I mean, this is nothing new in Texas, is where we've had, major, attempts to change the voting laws in the state and series of court battles over every one of these attempts. I think vote by mail is going to be an interesting situation because somebody is going to have to take more initiative. And, as we look at this election, it's looking like people were not shy about voting by mail. And I think, one of the really interesting topics that's come out of this is the way that the Texas Supreme Court decision on vote for mail was broadly read as not allowing people to vote by mail or because they did not allow an expansion and because so much of that decision discussed how it was, it was not a legitimate excuse to simply say you were worried about the coronavirus in requesting a mail-in ballot. On the other hand, that decision also very clearly left it up to the voter and to local officials to make that process work, and made it clear that local officials were to take the word of the voter, that if a voter applied for, to vote by mail and said that it was because of a disability or critically a health concern, that it wasn't the place of the county clerks to question the voter on that unless there was some, obvious evidence of fraud or some sort, and that the state had to kind of stay out of it. And so I think to change that, that situation, there would have to be some legal action, broadly speaking, from either the Attorney General's office or from the right. And it's a little unclear whether they have the stomach for that at this point.
One of the other issues that is pending, obviously, with the legislature coming back into session in January with maybe some new faces in there is redistricting, because we are at that time, every 10 years, we have to redistrict. And it seems like those legal battles play out for a long time as well. I mean, we're watching some of those, state house and state senate district runoffs tonight, like District 14, that's Kirk Watson's old district, House District 45, House District 47, here in Central Texas. There are a handful, and these people will be the ones who are deciding how the lines are going to be drawn for the next decade of where you vote and who you vote for. This is a really crucial legislative session year, correct?
Yeah, it is. And that's why you're seeing, a lot of attention to state legislative races, in particular in the state House of Representatives, where Democrats are within 9 seats of gaining a majority. And, if they gain a majority, they gain a larger voice in the redistricting process. It's not necessarily determinative because of the complex rules and the way that the process works. But, I think the very, a lot of this, put it this way, a lot of the storylines that we're following tonight, as you allude to, these competitive congressional races in the Austin area, competitive congressional races in the outskirts of Houston and Dallas, really are in part a function of how important redistricting is. So, for example, we're watching Congressional District 10, the McCall seat, and watching the Democratic primary on that side. One of the reasons that district appears so competitive now is because it was ambitiously gerrymandered to make it easier for a Republican to win that seat. And that was all. Those maps were drawn after the last census in 2010 during the 2011 session, and that district encompasses two areas that have been growing really rapidly: the outskirts of Austin and the outskirts of Houston. And the district has changed, and because of that population change brings political change, and it makes it harder for the initial partisan assumptions about the nature of the district to hold. And that's an illustration of just how politically important redistricting is to all of these actors that are up for election tonight. And you're right, it will be one of the fundamental subjects in the next session that starts in January. And it's one of the reasons that there are a lot of resources and a lot of strategy poured into these races in this cycle.
And of course, one of the other big issues for this particular upcoming legislative session will be the budget. Lawmakers always have to pass a budget. But this one, it seems a lot of people are nervous about it because the governor's already asked agencies to scale back their current budgets. And, we might be looking at some budget cuts or maybe shortfalls in the upcoming biennium. We're talking about setting the budget for Texas for 2 years.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say we might be. I would say we are.
I was trying to be hopeful, Jim.
Well, that's why you have me on to rain on your parade. I think the way to think about that, one of the things to really think about that is that, the person to really watch in this is a person that's not as visible most of the time as other statewide officials, and that's the state controller, Glenn Hager. And he has been meeting with legislators and regularly and, raining on their parades in the way I just rained on yours pretty regularly by telling them, every time they meet, he's giving them updates, the controller's in charge of collecting taxes at the state level, providing budget revenue estimates, basically kind of the, overseeing the finances of the state. And that means looking at the economy. And he has been giving very bad news to the legislators and to anybody else talking to him. And, I don't think anybody sees that getting any better between now and 2021. And, and there's a lot of, and it's been a long time since we've had, a legislative session that was that tight. We've had a few tight ones where there's not been a lot of extra money, but it's really been, it's been about a decade since the 2011 session when there was, about a $27 million shortfall. And the state got a little bit lucky that time because the controller at the time had kind of botched the estimate and there was more money than had been projected. I don't think anybody really thinks that's going to happen this time. One, because Glenn Hager's very good. And two, because the conditions are very bad.
The other thing you were talking about that people will want to really pay attention to what the Texas House is doing with redistricting. But the Texas House, it's going to also be kind of a shakeup because there will be a leadership change there, correct?
Yeah, there will be a new speaker, and we have no idea who it is. And you're right. Basically what we're in the process of doing now is electing the electorate that will choose the speaker, since the 150 members choose the speaker from among themselves. So, it's hard to overestimate from the perspective of people inside the legislature just how preoccupied they are with speaker politics and who's going to be the next speaker. If you spend any time right now with people in the Capitol community, staffers, members, you're not going to have a conversation with any of those people, at least the ones connected with the House, that does not include some speculation about, who's running around right now saying, hey, I'm one of the top 5 candidates here, and trying to put themselves in play.
All right. Jim Henson, Texas Politics Project, thank you for being with us. Don't go away, though, because I have a feeling as we go all night, we're going to need to talk to you again because you're a wealth of knowledge.
You're too kind. Okay, I won't go anywhere. You're sold. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you. And I saw Jody Barr, our KXAN investigator, sneak in. Hi, Jody. I know you've been out kind of surveying some of the polling places this evening. Can you talk to us about what you've been seeing, or you've been doing it all day, actually. Can you talk to us about what you've been seeing?
Yeah, well, what we have been seeing, I guess, is good news. If you're looking forward to November, it was we were aided with the benefit of the county, Williamson and Travis County, both their clerk's offices put up these real-time wait times at all of the polling places on their website. So we were able to follow that all day and look for trouble areas that may be popping up. They show you wait times from 0 to 10 minutes, 10 to 20, and 20 minutes or greater. And the good news is we only saw just a very few in Travis County bounce into the 10 to 20 minute wait range. Absolutely none of the polling places in Williamson County ever, the wait times never grew longer than 15 minutes. So we actually ended the day in Pflugerville on Pecan Street at the Pflugerville ISD polling place there. And the website indicated that there was a 40-minute wait time at one point. So we ran up there to try to respond to see what we could find. And when we got there, there were 3 people waiting outside. The lines were moving. So surveying it by eye, the turnout was probably what we all expected in a runoff. It was fairly low. But, getting to these polling places, we saw absolutely no trouble. And like we know, Josh, at KXAN, if there is any trouble, especially with election times, with the polls, they let us know that through our reported tip lines, our investigates tip lines. And I don't think we got a single one today saying that there were any troubles with the wait times at the polls.
Maybe they knew you were coming to check on them.
That's probably what.
Trouble is your middle name. What about kind of the rules that are in place right now for the coronavirus? Were you seeing people were being good about social distancing, wearing masks, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I can't think of. I know for a fact I didn't see anyone not masked up in line. Every polling place I went to, they had blue tape on the sidewalk separating people out 6 feet. I went to the AISD Performing Arts Center. We did a check there in the middle of the afternoon, and there were probably 15 people waiting in line. Every person had a mask on. They were all at least 6 feet apart with the, those distances taped off on the sidewalk. It was orderly, and you'd watch, people didn't seem to be impatient having to wait because they didn't wait long. And as hot as it was today, it was a blessing that everything went down as planned. And that's one of the things you wondered about going into this. It's our first election coverage in the middle of a pandemic. We didn't know if there would be bottlenecks there with, trying the social distancing, and they're spreading these voting machines out more in these polling areas. But we saw none of that today. It really appeared to go smoothly. Yeah,
it's because when the primary, happened back in March, it was just a couple of weeks after that really kind of all the restrictions and the concerns here in Texas really started popping up. So, we were out reporting in the field and now here we are. I'm in my office at home. You're where at your dining room or something?
Kitchen table where you see me every morning.
And, that's just kind of the way it is. And some of the experts we've been talking to tonight from UT said, maybe expect it all the way through November.
Yeah,
so,
I think today was a great test run to see how that would. Now, obviously, we don't have general election turnout, so maybe the patience may run thin. But it was good to see that today. That you go out expecting problems because that's what we encounter usually in our profession. We're there when the problem arises. But I have to say that again, not seeing any complaints coming in on the tip line, watching these wait times, and actually being there in person to verify. Even when the Pflugerville polling location that showed 40 minutes, when that turned red on the county's website, we responded immediately. Our photographer, Ben Freeberg, got there first, and he asked people as they were going into the polling location if they would come back and talk to him to tell him, we're not allowed in there with cameras, so we generally stay outside. But to tell what was going on in there. And he said the people he asked, expecting a 40-minute wait, they were back within 10 minutes. And it was, that was good, though. You never want to see troubles.
Yeah, and one of the things we've been talking about tonight is the mail-in ballots, because some of the races that are really close right now may not be decided until tomorrow, because mail-in ballots, you don't have to be in until tomorrow at 5 o'clock. So, I mean, there might be a whole other slew of problems to really pay attention to.
Yeah, when I talked to the Travis County clerk today, she did tell me that, you're good if your ballot got in today by 7, obviously that vote will be counted as all others in tonight's totals. But yeah, when I talked with her right at 4 o'clock, the clerk told me there were still 11,000 ballots outstanding. And that those, as long as they're postmarked by 7 p.m. tonight, they would be counted within the next 6 days at some point. So the clerk did tell me that they were not looking to, hold any election result hostage, that they would be going through these almost in real time, verifying these ballots, are qualified ballots to be counted, but that, it may sway it. I mean, that's 11,000. But the good news is, on top of that, though, there were, what did she tell me, 32,000 ballots were sent out initially. 32,000 people in Travis County asked to have a mail-in ballot sent to them. The clerk told me that 21,000 of those ballots had been returned by 4 o'clock today, and which is roughly about 80% of mail-in ballots that were requested were returned. The clerk told me that is consistent with every election that she has dealt with, that 80% of those mail-in ballots usually come back. So she didn't seem too concerned about that 11,000 number, the outstanding.
Before we let you go, Jody, I want to get your thoughts on the DA race. I'm not sure if you've heard, but Margaret Moore has conceded to Jose Garza. I know that you had to talk to Margaret Moore several times over the years you've been at KXAN for various investigations you've been doing that related back to the district attorney's office here in Travis County. Does that surprise you at all? I mean, what are you expecting now?
It's you never expect an incumbent to lose, but her opponent gave her a heck of a run in this Democrat primary, and obviously I didn't pay attention to the polling, and I didn't know what the campaigns were saying inside. But I mean, yeah, that's a surprise to see an incumbent lose in a primary, and I never got the impression that Margaret Moore was unpopular, but who knows what changed as far as the Javier Ambler investigation. I mean, a lot's changed in this law enforcement criminal justice realm here in the last few months. So, I know we had some challenges with that office with some open records, a project that, you and I had dabbled in together. There were more than 1,000 cases dismissed when Margaret Moore first took office, and we discovered these dismissals in an audit that she turned into the county, and we filed open records requests with her office to find out which cases these were and why they were dismissed. And that's something that office fought us on and denied releasing those records. We were very interested to find out, anytime someone like this takes office, especially a prosecutor, when they ultimately have this say in what happens with, dismissals on criminal matters. We never got those answers. And, that's something that I wish we would have been able to, hash out with her and figure out what's going on. But yeah, I mean, seeing an incumbent lose like that, I can't remember any scandal or, no one thing that really stood out where you thought, okay, well, this may compromise someone coming up, in the next race, but fairly surprised by that. You?
Well, I mean, it was one term for her. So it takes, some time to kind of get some of your policies through and everything. So, but she's still got some time left in office, so there's time to still make a difference. But thanks for being with us tonight, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
While I'm waiting for Will to come back up to talk about some results, I just wanted to real quickly talk about the Republican who is going to be facing Jose Garza, who just beat Margaret Moore in that DA Democratic runoff. It's the statement that Martin Harry has made. It says, with the defeat of incumbent District Attorney Margaret Moore in the runoff election, Martin Harry, Republican, and Jose Garza, Democrat, will face each other in the general election on November 3rd, 2020. The election for Travis County District Attorney presents a stark choice for voters. According to Harry, the choice is between his reform that will make Austin safer and Garza's anti-law enforcement agenda that will make the community less safe. Of course, we'll want to hear from Jose Garza on that, but that's really one of the first times we've heard from Martin Harry publicly, since this has been a big focus on the Democratic runoff tonight for that.
Yeah, so he knows who he's going to face in November at this point, and we want to show some results for the district attorney race here in Travis County. Again, there are not too many updates at this point to pass along, but here's where the last vote total stood. So Jose Garza is at 68%, Margaret Moore at 32%. She has now conceded the race to her challenger. So again, as Josh was just stating, Jose Garza will go on to face Martin Harry in November for the race for Travis County District Attorney. Turning to some other races at this point, I want to tell you, Josh, about what's happening with the U.S. Senate Democratic runoff between MJ Hagar and Royce West at this point. So I'm going to pull up our website because there are some new numbers in. And MJ Hagar is standing at 52% still. So that was what we said not too long ago. Royce West, the state senator from Dallas, is at 48%. She has just over about 20,000 or so votes ahead of him at this point. Again, many more votes left to count. So we are in likely for a long night and even more close results after this. One other thing to talk about is the Democratic runoff for the U.S. House District 10. This is Pritesh Gandhi and Mike Siegel. Mike Siegel has pulled ahead at this point with 56% of the vote, over 44% for Pritesh Gandhi. Another race that we just got an update on is for U.S. House District 31. This is what's in Williamson County. And we'll face incumbent Republican John Carter there. If you take a look, Donna Imam, the engineer, has pulled ahead at the vote count is 53%. To Dr. Christine Edie Mann's 47%. So that race is still pretty close, but Donna Imam has the lead there. I do also want to tell you all that right now, Jose Garza, the Democratic candidate for Travis County District Attorney, who has now defeated incumbent District Attorney Margaret Moore, he is speaking right now with his supporters. So I want us to take a listen as these virtual watch parties are happening here. This is kind of the sign of the times because not gathering in person right now. So let's take a listen as Jose Garza addresses a full Zoom window of his supporters, and he has a lot to celebrate tonight as he is pulled ahead as the Democratic nominee for Travis County District Attorney.
This is heat to make phone calls on behalf of this movement. In the last week alone, our volunteers called over 115,000 people here in Travis County. Those were not paid robocalls. That was not a paid phone bank. That was people who live in this community, who live all over this state and who live all over this country, who are ready for Travis County to be the leader that our community deserves in reimagining our criminal justice system. So many people have worked so hard to get us to this place. And I'm so grateful to this beautiful coalition of young people, of women, of working class people, of our allies in the labor movement, of immigrant families, of survivors of sexual assault who have poured themselves into this campaign and demanded change. I also want to just take a second. Many of you may have seen earlier that Margaret Moore conceded earlier this evening. And I just want to take a second to thank Margaret for her incredible service to our community. There is no doubt in my mind that Travis County is a more progressive community because of the decades of service that she has given to our community. They ran a fantastic campaign and they deserve to be congratulated for the work they put in too. But we are at a moment where tens of thousands of people have been pouring into the streets to say enough is enough, to demand change. And so tonight is a celebration of all of you. It is a celebration of the work that you have put into this moment. And before we get into the next segment, I also think that we all have a responsibility to stop and to pause and to really think about and take seriously all we have lost to get to this moment. All of the people who have been hurt, who have been killed, who have been left behind, whose families have been destroyed because of this broken criminal justice system, communities that have been torn apart. There is so much work that has gone into getting this movement to this place, but there is also so much loss. And each and every one of us has a responsibility to carry that loss with us as we march forward on to November and on to the change that we will be demanding starting January 1 or about then. So I'm just so grateful to all of you, so grateful to all of the speakers who have come through tonight and for all of the work they have done for the entirety of this campaign. And I look forward to being back with you guys in about 30 minutes. So thank you so much for sticking around. Yeah, we'll chat again soon.
All right, unmute yourselves and make some noise for RDA.
Thank you, Jose.
Yes, Jose. RDA.
Jose.
Sounds good. I love saying that. RDA. Okay, so I'm gonna need y'all to just mute yourselves for a second. You all have done a great job.
All right, everybody, that was Jose Garza, the Democratic nominee now for Travis County District Attorney, addressing many boxes of his supporters through Zoom. They're, again, big race. He pulled out a big win over District Attorney Margaret Moore, and she's already conceded, Josh.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big headlines of the night. A couple of races we're still watching, and I think that the results are going to keep coming back in, and we will stay with it all night. Some of the things we might not know about until tomorrow, though, with the mail-in ballots. So just keep it with us. I think we're going to take a quick break, right?
That is right. So we're going to take just a moment to breathe. We've been going on for more than an hour, almost 2 hours at this point, Josh. So congratulations on that, too, because you've done such a great job with providing the analysis and talking about everything that's happening as these results continue to pour in. So we're going to take a quick break. We do have speeches coming up with the two Democrats still facing a tough race, a very close race in the Democratic Senate primary. MJ Hagar and Royce West are set to speak not too far away from now, so we'll bring those to you live and have some more conversations. But for right now, we're going to end our live stream. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back very shortly.